The top stories tonight in Y News. The Department of Justice is looking into filing perjury complaints against self-confessed drug lord Kerwin Espinosa following his recantation of all of his drug allegations against detained Senator Laila De Lima.
COMELEC Commissioner Ray Bulay recommended that Directors James Jimenez and Frances Arabe be temporarily relieved from any functions involving media relations after the Pilipinas 2022 debates fiasco.
Metro Manila mayors are still studying the new number coding schemes that will ban vehicles from public roads during rush hours on 2 weekdays.
Canadian health officials have removed a ban on blood donations from gay men.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Friday, April 29, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am Kat Dumaraos.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website untvweb.com. I am Mariel Latoza.
First in the news. The Department of Justice is now considering to file perjury cases against self-confessed drug lord Kerwin Espinosa. This after he recanted his statements linking Senator Laila De Lima to illegal drug trade. Rosalie Cos explains why.
The Justice Department is seriously mulling over filing perjury charges against self-confessed drug lord Kerwin Espinosa. According to Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, making false statements under oath is a criminal offense.
Alam niyo, tinitignan yan ngayon ng ating Office of the Prosecutor General kung pwede ngang makasuhan kasi nga magkaiba yung kanya naging statement.
In Espinosa's 4-page counter affidavit submitted before the DOJ, he retracted his allegations against Senator Laila De Lima that he gave a total of 8 million pesos to the campaign funds of the legislator through her personal driver Ronnie Dayan. He also said any and all of his statements given during the Senate hearings or in the form of sworn written affidavits against Senator De Lima are not true. Any statement he made against the senator are false and was the result only of pressure, coercion, intimidation, and serious threats to his life and family members from the police who instructed him to implicate the senator into the illegal drug trade. But according to the DOJ, Espinosa has to prove his statements when he faces perjury charges.
I think that is something that si Mr. Espinosa has to contend with. He has to answer yung issue na yan. Anong nangyari? Bakit ganon? And both statements, I understand, were made under oath and they are inconsistent. So baka nga merong maging liability si Mr. Espinosa, but this is something that he will have to contend with and he will have to address and something that he has to deal with eventually.
Justice Secretary Guevara will hold discussions with DOJ's panel of prosecutors to determine if Espinosa's testimonies are material to the prosecution's cause. Meanwhile, the palace also believes that Espinosa's recantation will not have any effect on the pending criminal charges against Senator De Lima, as underscored by the Prosecutor General. On the other hand, the camp of Senator De Lima is now considering Espinosa to be their witness. De Lima's lawyer and spokesperson Dino De Leon said they will be coordinating with Espinosa's camp to find out how those people behind the senator's prosecution exactly orchestrated everything against her. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God. The Justice
COMELEC Commissioner Ray Bulay has recommended that Directors James Jimenez be temporarily relieved from any functions involving media relations after the Pilipinas 2022 debates fiasco. Dante Amento tells us why.
While the investigation on the Pilipinas or COMELEC debates 2022 fiasco is ongoing, Commissioner Ray Bulay has recommended to COMELEC Chairman Saidamin Pangarungan to temporarily relieve COMELEC spokesperson Director James Jimenez and Director Frances Arabe from any functions involving media relations and exposure. Bulay adds, in order to continue the duties that will be left by Jimenez and Arabe in the Education and Information Department or EID, both of them will also be temporarily replaced. However, they can still perform other functions under the supervision of their committee heads. The investigation was prompted by the fiasco of the last presidential and vice presidential town hall debates scheduled last April 23 and 24 respectively. This was after Impact Hub Pilipinas, the partner organizer of the commission, failed to settle over 14 million pesos of obligation to Sofitel Manila, the event's venue. The poll body created the Task Force Pilipinas Debates 2022 fiasco, headed by Commissioner Bulay, to probe the incident. Bulay clarifies, based on their preliminary findings, the task force found reasonable cause to conduct a formal fact-finding and administrative disciplinary investigation. Meanwhile, Commissioner Bulay disclosed he cannot release information on the issue to avoid trial by publicity and to preserve the dignity of the procedures of the investigation. Meanwhile, Chairman Pangarungan has yet to comment on Bulay's recommendation. Commissioner George Erwin Garcia, who is in charge of the COMELEC debates, also refused to give a statement at this time. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Independent presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo invites her closest rival Bongbong Marcos to a debate. However, Marcos's camp declines, saying this will never happen. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
10 days before the May 9 elections, presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo has made a call to her fellow candidate Bongbong Marcos to attend a debate to answer the issues surrounding him once and for all. This as Robredo emphasized that they have a responsibility to present themselves to the electorate as candidates running for the country's highest position.
Sa lahat na patawag ng COMELEC, siya lang yung hindi nagpaunlak. Responsibilidad niya sa tao na ihayag hindi lang yung kanya mga plataforma, pero para sagutin yung mga issues laban sa kanya. Mahirap kung ayaw niyang harapin ito kasi napakarami ng disinformation sa fake news. At dapat tanungin siya nito harapan para malaman ng kanyang supporters kung ano ba talaga yung totoo. Kasi napakarami yung napapapaniwala na mga kasinungalingan. Dapat sana may pagkakataon yung taong i-confront siya about this.
Vice Presidential bet Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan also joined his running mate's call.
Kahit sa Vice Presidential race, dapat humarap si Sara. Dapat humarap si BBM. Silang dalawa. Kasi kami lumiligaw sa taong bayan. At pag lumiligaw, dapat humaharap para makilatis.
Before this, Robredo announced she will no longer attend the interview organized by the Commission on Elections and its new partner, Kapisanan ng mga Broadcaster ng Pilipinas or KBP. Instead, she will devote her time with their volunteers in the remaining days of the campaign period. In a statement, Marcos's spokesperson, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, says what they are doing is positive campaigning, unlike what he calls the yellow camp, who resort to negative and deceptive campaigning. He adds the debate challenge of Robredo to Marcos will never happen. Today, Robredo went back to the vote-rich province of Laguna. There, she visited her supporters and held a dialogue with various sectors in Paete and Pagsanhan. She also attended a multi-sectoral assembly in Don Bosco College in Canlubang in the city of Calamba. Meanwhile, thousands of supporters attended the Grand People's Rally in Santa Rosa, Laguna. In the 2016 vice presidential race, Robredo lost to Marcos in Laguna by over 50,000 votes. The Robredo ticket will be visiting the neighboring province of Batangas tomorrow. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
A security analyst says warmer ties pursued by the Duterte administration with China should continue to the next administration. However, there should also be boundaries. Nel Maribohok will tell us why.
we need to maintain our friendly relationship with China, but in a cautious manner because we have our own national interest to protect.
The friendly relationship between the Philippines and China under the Duterte administration should be maintained, according to Dr. Romel Banlawi, President of the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies. However, Banlawi suggests that the next administration should also consider recalibrating the foreign policy of the Philippines towards China.
There is a need to recalibrate our foreign policy by pursuing a more cautious approach towards China. Kasi good to be friendly but not too friendly to the extent of being subservient to China.
Under the Duterte administration, independent foreign policy is established to maximize the Philippines' autonomy, security, and prosperity. Under this policy, the president strengthened ties with China and Russia. Duterte believes that the country needs investment, aid, and trade from China despite the ongoing maritime dispute in the West Philippine Sea. Based on the Board of Investments data from the DTI, China ranked first in foreign investments in the Philippines in 2018, amounting to $975 million and continued to show strong interest in 2019 with $1.7 billion worth of investments. Despite the economic benefits from China, Banlawi said the incoming president should not set aside other countries like United States.
Sustain our security alliance with the United States and go then our security partnership with other countries like Japan and Australia and even South Korea, who are willing to assist us in our efforts to build our defense capabilities.
Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Aside from securing the polling centers nationwide, PNP personnel are also ready to be deputized by the COMELEC to serve as Board of Election Inspectors during the elections. Leah Ilagan tells us why.
The Philippine National Police anticipates any worst-case scenarios come the May 9 elections, including the possible non-appearance of some Board of Election Inspectors or BEIs. PNP Directorate for Operations Director, Police Major General Val de Leon said 988 of their personnel were trained and deputized by COMELEC to act as BEIs for the upcoming elections. The said police personnel will be deployed in 10 areas in Mindanao that are under COMELEC control.
Priority natin yung area na under COMELEC control, tapos doon sa mga area na category red, para ganun ay handang-handa tayo para walang manaig na magkaroon ng threat and intimidation sa ating mga botante.
So far, De Leon said, the PNP has not yet received a request from the COMELEC for the deployment of cops that will serve as BEIs.
Ang advantage siyempre dito ay may pakita natin na handa ang mga kapulisan. Pero most of all, doon sa mga natatakot ay maaaring o doon sa mga kandidato na ginagamit ang mga dahas at pananakot sa mga botante. Kung nakita mo ang mga BI pwedeng informado, baka ang isipin nila ay it is the government that takes control.
So far, the PNP has recommended to place 100 municipalities and 14 cities under the red category for being election areas of great concern. Leah Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of the Interior and Local Government assured everything is prepared for the upcoming elections. According to the department, the Commission on Elections even has contingency plans in case of any disruptions on Election Day. Eileen Cerudo reports.
The Department of the Interior and Local Government is one of the agencies directed by the national government to ensure security during the elections. According to the DILG, in case of disruptions or any form of violence during election day, the Commission on Elections has a contingency plan prepared to respond to the situation.
Malaki ang paghahanda natin at handang-handa na po ang buong DILG organization para gawin ang kaniyang tungkulin.
Based on DILG spokesperson Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya, more than 16,000 Philippine National Police personnel will be deployed in various polling precincts, while 41,000 PNP personnel will man checkpoints. The DILG also directed to increase PNP forces in areas identified as election hotspots. Meanwhile, police personnel will also monitor the transport of election paraphernalias.
Kasama rin po yung paghahatid ng mga election paraphernalia, yung pagsisecure sa mga vote counting machines, no? Nadadalhin sa mga polling centers, yung transportation and logistics ng lahat ng kagamitan ng Commission on Elections ay kasama rin po sa election duties ng ating kapulisan.
Aside from security, the DILG will also strictly implement minimum public health standards to avoid infections, especially after the first case of the Omicron variant BA.2.12 was confirmed in the country. The DILG also encourages LGUs and barangay officials to remind voters in their area to wear face masks and adhere to health protocols. Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
An election watchdog hopes that the COMELEC's decision to restrict isolated COVID-positive patients to vote will still change before the actual May 9 elections. JP Nunes will tell us why.
Election watchdog Contra Daya condemns the decision of the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, to restrict COVID-19 positive patients to exercise their right to vote in the elections. Contra Daya convener Danilo Arau explains that the poll body failed to recognize the rights of voters. They insist that COMELEC should only restrict those who are not registered voters.
Parang binabaliwala natin yung preparasyon ng Committee on the New Normal ng COMELEC para sa ganitong classic scenario. Ang nakalagay po sa ating polisiya sa eleksyon, ang mga hindi lang makakaboto ay yung mga hindi rehistrado.
The group suggests that COMELEC should put isolated polling precincts exclusive for COVID-19 positive patients.
Sa aming palagay, dapat manindigan yung COMELEC na dapat na lahat ng mga rehistradong botante ay magkakaroon ng pagkakataong bumoto sa ika-9 ng Mayo. At kung sakaling sila ay may sakit, meron namang isolated polling precinct na nakatayo precisely para hindi mahalo o makahawa yung mga may sakit sa araw ng halalan.
In an interview earlier today, COMELEC Commissioner George Erwin Garcia clarified that those COVID-19 positive patients, particularly in isolation facilities or houses, will be restricted to vote. Only those who are showing COVID-19 symptoms on election day will be allowed to use the designated isolated polling precincts. Commissioner Garcia also said that there is no law that will allow the delivery of ballots to isolation facilities for COVID-19 patients. JP Nunez, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine Genome Center says there is no detected onward transmission of the Omicron subvariant BA.2.12 in the Philippines. This after the first case of the subvariant was detected in Baguio City. Aiko Miguel reports.
The Philippine Genome Center said the 52-year-old Finnish female who arrived from Finland last April 2 is still the lone detected case in the Philippines, adding that there's still no onward transmission of the BA.2.12 in the country. Currently, 44 close contacts were traced and are asymptomatic. Majority of her close contacts are fully vaccinated.
Ang ating nakita pa lang po is the BA.2.12, yung Finnish lady na nirelease na rin po ng ating DOH, no, yung kanyang background, and the individual has already returned to her home country. Contact tracing of her fellow passengers in the airplane as well as in the 2 universities here. Hindi naman po sila nakapag-detect ng onward transmission.
PGC Executive Director Dr. Cynthia Saloma said they can't completely remove the possibility if the Finnish national contracted the BA.2.12 in the Philippines. But at the same time, Dr. Saloma said the virus may have come from her home country considering Omicron's incubation period of 3 to 5 days and longest 14 days. BA.2.12 Omicron subvariant was circulating in other countries including Canada.
The chances are na dinala talaga niya, particularly because the signature mutation itong yung variant na ito, yung BA.2.12, is really widely circulating in Europe. No? In contrast, for example, to other countries in Southeast Asia, mas marami talaga po siya sa Europe at saka sa North America.
Dr. Saloma also said there are no other sublineages and hybrid variants detected in the Philippines.
Now, regarding the BA.2.12.1, which is kumbaga anak nitong .12 na ito, which is actually circulating in New York now, wala pa po tayo so far na-detect na kaso nito. And so far, we have also not detected any of the hybrid variants, yung mga XE, mga XH, at kung ano-ano pa, wala pa po tayong nag-detect.
PGC also said that Omicron is still a dominant variant in the country, particularly BA.2.3 sublineage. 95% of the reported cases last March and April are Omicron sublineage BA.2.3. The DOH said health experts are still studying these Omicron sublineages in terms of their transmissibility and if they cause more severe disease. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Aklan local government plans to regulate the number of tourists visiting the Boracay Island. Lalaine Moreno will tell us why live. Yes, Lalaine?
Good evening, Kat. There is no specific date yet as to when the provincial government of Aklan and Malay municipality will strictly implement the tourist cap in the island. According to the LGU, they are still working on their system to monitor the number of tourists entering the island daily. The move comes after reports surfaced that the island went beyond its carrying capacity during the holiday. Once the capacity limit is reached, the LGU will automatically stop releasing QR codes. Aklan and tourists, however, are exempted from getting QR code.
We will make sure that the numbers will not exceed the carrying capacity. And we are now looking into the issuance of the QR codes, that we might put a cap on the number of QR codes, the number of tourists based on the QR codes that they are getting from our system. Because right now, our system is, if you apply for Boracay travel, the QR code is automatically given. No, wala nang validation. That was what we did before. So it's an automatic generated QR code, but we can also put a cap on those systems. So pwede naman gawin namin yan, and that will be what we will be doing in the next couple of days.
Aklan and Malay LGU stated that they did not breach the carrying capacity during the long weekend. According to officials, there was a problem within their data gathering. Based on Malay LGU, 12,266 entered the island last April 14, 6,192 on April 15, 5,512 on April 16, and 5,315 on April 17.
Nagka-problema lang pala doon sa hindi lang na-synchronize ang data o yung mga figure na binigay. So I think it will be corrected, and yun nga, there was already discussions na tingnan yung carrying capacity.
Nagkaroon lang ng difference on the reporting, no, of the number of tourists that came in and out. So na-miss lang doon yung figures na na-record ang pumasok, but hindi na-record yung palabas. So technically, we did not breach the carrying capacity of the island.
According to the Department of the Interior and Local Government, the 19,215 carrying capacity set cannot be changed until 2023 or every 5 years. The LGU will be accounted to monitor this. Back to you, Kat.
Thank you, Lalaine Moreno, reporting live from Iloilo City.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority pushes the proposal for a 40% traffic volume reduction scheme. But the agency says the newly proposed number coding scheme for private cars is still being studied by the Metro Manila Council. Asher Cadapan Jr. explains why.
All traffic policies are based on studies by experts and not speculations. Simulations are also being conducted especially for a proposed traffic scheme to make sure that it will be beneficial to the public, particularly commuters. The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority explains this as they seek approval from local officials in the National Capital Region for a new number coding scheme for private cars. This as study shows that over 90% of vehicles plying EDSA are private cars. MMDA Chairman Romando Artes says they have already filed a proposal for the new traffic scheme to the Metro Manila Council, but the NCR mayors are still further studying the proposed policy.
Noong Martes po, nag-meeting po kami tungkol dito. Meron lamang po mga ilang datos pa na hinihingi yung ibang mga mayors at pinasa-simulate po sa amin yung programa para makita po talaga nila yung epekto po na ikaluluwag nitong bagong number coding scheme sa mga pangunahin po nating lansangan, Kuya Daniel.
The newly proposed number coding scheme restricts private vehicles in EDSA and other major thoroughfares for 2 days in a week. The MMDA targets to reduce 40% traffic volume during afternoon rush hour as it will only take effect from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is compared to the current number coding scheme, which only bans vehicles once a week and takes effect from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., reducing volume of traffic to only 20%. The MMDA chief explains the reduced volume will allow faster travel time of vehicles, which will give way to other motorists beyond the rush hour.
Kuya Daniel, yun nga po yung aming resulta ng aming pag-aaral. Instead po na ma-stuck ka sa traffic every day, sa hapon, magagamit mo pa po itong 2 oras, 2 beses ang linggo sa mas produktibong bagay.
The MMDA eyes to implement the proposed coding scheme in May as traffic volume is expected to increase to above pre-pandemic level once face-to-face classes and work will be allowed due to the easing of restrictions against the pandemic. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Labor groups called on President Rodrigo Duterte to issue a wage hike order before his term ends on June 2022. Janice Enhente reports why.
The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines asked the government to grant their request to increase the wages of workers in commemoration of the Labor Day. The group urges President Rodrigo Duterte to issue an order to the wage boards to speed up the approval on the petition for wage increase before the president steps down from his office.
Ang ating wage increase ay napakaliit mula nung siya'y umupo hanggang ngayon napalabas na siya 2 months from now.
Ang nakikita namin may pag-asa ay si Pangulong Duterte. Maaari niyang kalabitin, maaari niyang bulungan ang mga boards na maglabas ng wage increase orders within the month. Kayang-kaya ng Pangulo yon. Bakit hindi niya bulungan ang mga wage board at sabihan na maglabas ng wage increase orders as soon as possible?
The TUCP has filed 10 wage hike petitions in various regions which have yet to be approved by the wage board. The group also called on the government to end contractualization and provide permanent employment to workers. Janice Enhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, the most striking attack from Russia ever since Russian forces pulled out was witnessed on Thursday as missiles were deployed across Ukraine. Marvidal Finn will give us the details live. Yes, Marvi, good evening.
Good evening, Marielle. The explosions came in just under an hour after the conference between the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and President Volodymyr Zelensky. 5 missiles were launched into the city as addressed by President Zelensky in his nightly announcement.
І сьогодні, одразу по завершенню наших перемовин в Києві у місто полетіли російські ракети. 5 ракет. І це багато що говорить про справжнє ставлення Росії до глобальних інституцій, про намагання російського керівництва принизити ООН і все, що організація уособлює. А отже,
At the latest, an estimated dozen people were injured in the bombardment, with many who were trapped under the debris of destroyed buildings, emergency officials say. In their discussion, the UN Secretary General and President Zelensky conducted a conference detailing the evacuation of the residents and troops trapped in the Mariupol Azovstal steel plant.
During my visit to Moscow, President Putin agreed in principle to the involvement of the United Nations and the International Committee for the Red Cross in the evacuation of civilians from the Azovstal plant in Mariupol. Today, President Zelensky and I had the opportunity to address this issue. And as we speak, there are intense discussions to move forward on this proposal to make it a reality.
Over 100,000 people in Mariupol are in mortal danger, the local council says, as the conditions set by Russia do not meet the sanitary requirements with a lack of food and potable water. With such conditions, the Mariupol City Council have expressed the possibilities of deadly diseases breaking out in the city as decaying bodies scatter around and unhygienic conditions persist in the city. Marielle?
Thank you, Marvidal Finn, reporting live.
Southern California will implement new restrictions limiting outdoor watering 1 day a week starting on June 1st. Ruth Bahe will tell us why live. Yes, Ruth?
Good evening, Kath. 6 million residents in South California are facing water shortage emergency and has ordered to immediately reduce water use by 35%. This affects most cities and communities in Los Angeles, Ventura, and San Bernardino counties. According to Adele Haj Khalil, General Manager of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, to make sure that they have enough water supply for their basic needs and safety, everyone must immediately and drastically reduce their water use.
Right. This is a crisis. This is unprecedented. We have never done anything like this before. And because we haven't seen this situation happen like this before. We don't have enough water to meet normal demands for the 6 million people living in the state water project dependent areas.
Water member agencies must find alternative ways to save water. If it exceeds or not enforced, will face penalties for non-compliance. Metropolitan is working with affected agencies to formulate water solutions such as new access in Colorado River, additional engineering and infrastructure enhancement, and investing in a water recycling project. Kath?
Ruth, are there any exemptions for this emergency water consumption move?
Kath, the Metropolitan Water District has not imposed restrictions directly on consumers. They require water agencies that are receiving state water project supplies to enforce watering limits, specify the day of the week, and implement protocols in watering. However, hand watering of trees is allowed until the restrictions are lifted. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Ruth Bahe, reporting live.
Canadian health officials announced Thursday the federal government has lifted the ban on blood donations from gay men, a rule that has long been criticized in Canada as homophobic. Nerissa Dando explains why live. Yes, Nerissa, go ahead.
Mariel, the Canadian Blood Services requested the federal government last year to scrap the rule on preventing blood donations from gay men. Officials announced its approval that will allow gay men to donate blood starting September 30. The screening process will no longer involve an inquiry about their sexual orientation. Instead, health officials will ask whether they engage in any higher risk sexual behaviors. Canada's ban was first put in place in 1992 in the wake of a public health scandal, where some 2,000 people were infected with HIV and almost 60,000 were infected with hepatitis C from tainted blood donations. The lifelong ban was first eased in 2013 when they permitted gay men to donate blood if they had been abstinent for 5 years. Then it was further eased down to the current 3-month period. Health Canada called the move a significant milestone. Many countries that have instituted similar bans due to the 1980s AIDS epidemic have already lifted said restrictions. This includes the UK, France, Greece, Israel, Denmark, and Brazil. Marielle?
Thank you, Nerissa Dando, for that live report.
Moderna is seeking to be the first to offer their COVID-19 vaccine for the youngest children as it asked the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to clear low-dose shots for kids under 6 years old. Jane Robles will tell us why live. Yes, Jane?
Kath, Moderna submitted data to the FDA to show proof that 2 low-dose shots of its vaccine can protect children younger than 6 years old against COVID-19. The drug company signaled its 2-dose regimen generated immune protection in the youngest children comparable to young adults. Many parents are patiently waiting to have the vaccine for their children, and they believe it is better than not having any protection. The FDA cannot evaluate the vaccine until the manufacturer completes their application. Meanwhile, Pfizer is also preparing to submit data to the FDA on a potential 3-dose regimen of its vaccine for children under 5. Back to you, Cass.
Thank you, Jane Robles, for that live report.
A new way of testing for COVID-19 using breath was approved to be used in the United States. Therese Longbowen will give us the details live. Yes, Therese, go ahead.
Good evening, Marielle. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced last April 14 the approval of the emergency use authorization of the first COVID-19 diagnostic test using breath samples developed by Inspect IR Systems. The said breathalyzer, called PNY 1000 mobile COVID screening device, only takes 3 minutes from sample collection through exhaling into a straw to analysis to detection and reporting. As compared to standard PCR tests, the COVID-19 breathalyzer doesn't require a clinical professional to administer the testing due to its straightforward process. On US FDA's conducted study, the test correctly identified 91.2% of positive samples and 99.3% of negative samples. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization emphasized the need for continuous testing in monitoring the behavior of COVID-19.
As many countries reduce testing, WHO is receiving less and less information about transmission and sequencing. This makes us increasingly blind to patterns of transmission and evolution. But this virus won't go away just because countries stop looking for it. It's still spreading, it's still changing, and it's still killing.
Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you, Therese Longbowen, for that live report.
And before before we close, we will leave you with the word giving glory to God from the book of Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 27. It says, "He that diligently seeketh good procureth favor, but he that seeketh mischief, it shall come unto him."
And those are the reasons behind the news, April 29, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Maria Latoza reporting live from Australia.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am Kat Dumaraos. We serve the people, we give glory to God.